folks. So it's just a small group tonight. Kathleen should be here shortly, I'm assuming. I don't think I heard from her today.
She'll be here. I've been talking to her all day.
Okay, good. All right, so just real quick, we're talking about developmentally appropriate practice tonight. I asked you to create something to share with us that you can hold up or show on camera that represents your understanding of developmentally appropriate practices. I have a PowerPoint. We'll see how much of that I need to show based on what you already know. Did you talk about developmentally appropriate practices much in the fall in class? Okay, good. That helps. And then we had 2 chapters in the Gartrell book that were related to developmentally appropriate practice, just to give you a little different take on DAP. And we have the Help for Billy that Kathleen and Jamie are gonna lead our discussion on. So that's our plan for tonight. And next week we don't have class. It's a holiday, JMU holiday, in lieu of not having spring break. You get a couple random days here and there, and one's tomorrow, and then the other one is sometime in March or February or April. It's a Thursday, so I didn't pay attention to which day that was, but it might impact you all because you only have seminar every other Thursday, so she probably didn't schedule it that Thursday. Any questions about that?
You said I just have a quick question about the sharing thing.
Yeah.
So I did mine on the computer and my printer is not printing.
So I think I made it possible for you to share your screen.
Perfect.
And when we get to that, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
You should be able to go up under, do you see sharing screen? Is that a possibility for you at the bottom? Maybe where the ... is?
Yeah.
Diamond sees it. Where is it, Diamond?
It's a green button right in the middle that says share screen.
Do you see that, Jamie? Okay, she's got it. All right, good. So that's another way you could share it.
Did you say that the JMU break day was tomorrow, or was it next week?
Next Wednesday, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So we won't have class next Wednesday.
Okay, perfect.
I get to go to an all-day retreat. Yay. Which is basically means an all-day meeting on Zoom. Even better. Oh, I saw this meme the other day that said any meeting without food should be an email. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to turn things over to Salma and Jessica, and I think they're going to share screen and lead us through a morning meeting.
Are you going to share it, Selma, or? Okay. That's what I assume you were doing.
There we go.
I just needed to make sure that I had the right thing. Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Salma Vasquez, and Jessica Levine and I will be presenting our morning meeting. So we have a little to-do list on y'all's right side, and then the date on the top right corner.
Just February the 10th. So we're going to do attendance, and usually, if you can see, we just got a picture, but kids will come in and find their picture in a basket and check in if they're here. And if they're not here, they will see what friends are missing from the board. And we will be doing a good morning song. And this is, by now, everybody knows each other. So we're not going to sing names, but we're going to do a fun little song. So, but this song, everybody's gonna have to stand up and do a little movement. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Selma, are you gonna help me sing it or?
No, you're leading it.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, someone just came in. Apparently, he wants to hear the song too. Or say hi, David. All right, so it goes like this. We'll do it twice. We'll do it once where I sing it, and then we could all sing it together the second time. So it's good morning, neighbor. How do you do? It's gonna be a beautiful day. Greet your neighbor. Boogie on down. Give a jump and turn around. And then the second time, we'll sit back down. So you guys ready to sing it with me? All right. Hello, neighbor. What do you say? It's gonna be a beautiful day. Greet your neighbor. Boogie on down. Give a jump and sit back down.
So I don't know what happened, but I lost your PowerPoint.
Uh-oh.
Can you try re-sharing your screen again or not sharing and then starting it again? I clicked somewhere and it just disappeared and I can't find it anywhere. Hey, Mia.
Hello. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't know.
You ready? So if a friend's not there, we will sing a Wish You Well song. And Amelia and I actually did a Wish You Well song together. For a lot of you don't know Pat Kennedy, but she was my old director. So we decided to sing her You Wish You Well. So we'll just play it. Oops.
We wish you well. We wish you well. All through the day today, we wish you well. Miss Pat, we wish you well.
Oh,
That's what we would do for students who were not there. So they know we were thinking of them. And usually we would videotape it because there's a lot of apps now for schools. And so that way they could see that their classmates are thinking about them.
did you send that to Pat?
No, I didn't, but I will.
Oh, you should. You should.
The next part of our good morning meeting, it's a good morning message. Dear clase, querida clase, today is, since at this point of the school year, the kids have been doing this for a while, they know to look for clues and find that, like, in the top right corner, there's February 10th. So they know what year it is because we've been practicing. So at this point, we've been doing this and they are used to it. It's not that we're just throwing them out into the deep end and trying to have them figure it all out. So we have the letters on the bottom left corner of which letters you can put up and use. So today is, and then we would have the kids repeat like Wednesday, because yesterday was Tuesday. Good. February what? February 10th, 2021. Today we will be reading Piggy and Elephant. ¿Puedo jugar yo también? Can I play too? By Mo Williams. Buenos dias.
And now this is the point where we're calling it the helping hands, where we go over our daily schedule and talking about their jobs for the day. So how we would do is either we could do it just like the picture of making pockets or having a visual list. And how they would rotate is they would have that job for the whole week, and then they would rotate down each one day so that everybody makes sure they get a turn to have that job each week. So we would have an adventure announcer telling us what our special activity is going to do. Calendar helper, attendance helper. We would go back and see who's there, not there, just count who's there, not there. Meteorologist, the gardener, the plant water, the cot helper, the teacher's helper, and the light switch helper.
And then the next thing would be calendar. Since we're focusing on kindergarten, we want to do, and we're focusing on a bilingual classroom, we want to do both languages. So it's going to be febrero. We have, there's Sunday and there's Monday, there's Tuesday and there's Wednesday, there's Thursdays and there's Friday, and then there's Saturday, days of the week.
Days of the week too.
Hay domingo y lunes y martes, después miércoles, hay jueves y viernes y sábado también, días de la semana. And then we have the day, so we're gonna count, ready? 1 all the way down to 10. So we would do ASL as well as Spanish. So as we're doing English side, we're doing ASL. And then when we're doing Spanish, we're just doing Spanish because that is too many things to be combining. And then if we have any birthdays or any celebrations coming up between the 1st and the 10th, because that is the day that we're in, we would mark them, or they would be marked depending on if they had already passed and we did them before, or if it's someone's birthday and it's the 10th.
And now we have the meal weather calendar, and we would have a student, whoever that was the weather helper, look outside, tell us what they see outside, and then we'll have like a sticker or like a card, and they will post it up so everybody could see, and then they would announce to their classmates what the weather is like for today.
Then we have the daily schedule with the different activities that we're going to be doing throughout the day with visuals, so kids can understand what is happening, because at this point they're not reading big words like activity, but they can figure out time because we've done it so many times and it's so repetitive and it's just smaller syllables.
All right, now we're doing the book of the day. So this was our activity, and someone's going to read it in Spanish, and then we have questions in English and Spanish that we're going to ask throughout the book. But for to get us thinking about what the book is about and everything and what's going to happen, I have a question. It says, how did Piggy and Elfin come up with a solution for Snake to play with them? And I want to tell me how would you have solved the problem? So I want you guys to be thinking of that while we're reading the book.
Hoy vamos a leer Puedo jugar yo también por Mo Williams. Cerdita, vamos a jugar a la pelota. Sí, me encanta jugar a la pelota con mis amigos. Yo la tiro, yo la agarro. Perdón, ¿puedo jugar yo también? What do you think they're going to do? ¿Qué creen que van a hacer Cerdito y Elefante?
I don't think they realize they have to answer it.
Okay. I mean, we can continue. ¿No quieren jugar conmigo? No es eso. Sí queremos jugar contigo, pero jugamos a agarrar la pelota con los brazos. ¿Y eso qué? Que tú no tienes brazos. ¿Que yo no tengo brazos? ¡Ah! Ya sé que no tengo brazos. Soy una serpiente. Eres una serpiente muy graciosa. Pero, ¿puede una serpiente jugar a la pelota? No lo sé. Puedo intentarlo. ¡Genial! Yo tiraré la pelota. Intenta agarrarla. Ahí va la pelota. ¡Pam! Lo siento. No importa. Vamos a intentarlo otra vez. Bueno, lo volveré a intentar. ¡Pam! Ahora yo lo intento. ¡Pam! Esto no funciona. Necesitamos otras ideas. Sí. A lo mejor necesitamos más pelotas. ¡Más pelotas! ¡Más pelotas! ¡Ay, no! Pam, 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 pam. ¿Necesitamos todavía más pelotas? Quizás. ¡Esperen! Lo hemos intentado, pero soy una serpiente. Y una serpiente no puede jugar a la pelota. ¿No? Tú eres nuestra amiga. Todos vamos a jugar a la pelota. ¿Cómo? Tiene una idea. Me encanta jugar a la pelota con mis amigos.
And then we would ask the question again to the class and have a discussion about that. And then we would come into our transition. So after morning meeting, and we're going to do adventure time at Big Rock because that's what we do at the YCP too. And that is it. That is our morning meeting.
So I know some Spanish, but I didn't catch the whole gist of the book. But he was a serpent, and he couldn't play ball because he didn't have hands.
Mhm.
How did it end exactly?
They figured out a way where they could play catch with him. So they were throwing him, and that's how he was able to include him to play catch.
Oh, okay, I got it.
and during the book, we would talk about what they're seeing and everything,
Okay.
and ask questions because not everybody at that point might not know all the Spanish. So we would stop and ask what they see and get them involved in the book.
Questions? Do you guys have questions for them?
It was really fun and engaging. You guys did
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen those characters in that book before. I just don't. Is there a series?
It's a whole series, and then he writes other books too, but he always throws the other characters in the other books too, so they're all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very good children's series, and the kids love Mo Willems books. So
these folks went above and beyond what you all really need to do. They did a whole extra stuff, right? I just want to make sure everybody knows that you don't have to do the whole PowerPoint and the whole morning schedule, but I'm guessing that you did this, Jessica, because this is a similar pattern that you follow at YCP, so it was easy to fit that in. Do you use that PowerPoint template for that at the YCP?
Mia uses a PowerPoint, but not that template.
Okay. Well, you're welcome to use a template if you want when it's your turn to lead morning meeting. The pieces that I'm looking for that they had for sure were the greeting, the activity, the morning message, and what am I forgetting? There's 4 pieces. The greeting, sharing. Oh, we didn't do sharing, but we don't have to do sharing. Do y'all have a quick sharing you'd like to do? I didn't even think about it. When I looked at your PowerPoint, I said, yeah, it looks good, but I didn't think that there was no sharing in that.
I knew we forgot something.
It's not your fault. I mean, you sent it to me earlier. I should have caught it. We don't have to do sharing.
Okay.
There's plenty of other stuff in there. Yeah. Okay. So no questions for these guys for their, all right, we'll move
I have a
on.
quick question.
Question. Okay. Yes.
This is probably more for Salma, just because I'm so curious. Like, how much of the Spanish are your kids understanding when they're just beginning?
Are you talking in general or like?
I'm talking like in your practicum placement right now.
Oh, see, most of them are Hispanic.
Oh, okay.
We have 2 Americans in one group and then like 3 in another one, and that's it. All the rest of them are Hispanic.
Okay. Yeah, I have kind of the same thing in my practicum, but I know the American kids, excuse me, are really struggling. But I mean, I think it's so great because, you know, the Hispanic kids get to have something in their language.
See, for me, some of the Hispanic kids are struggling more than the Americans, which I find very interesting. So I'm like, your parents speak it at home, so I don't understand why you're struggling.
Hmm.
Would you
That's it.
would you clarify like what happens in the book like while you're reading in these bilingual classrooms? Because my little cousin, she was in a bilingual classroom. Obviously, like she's not Hispanic or anything, but my family thought it'd be a good idea for her to learn a second language and when she was younger. But I know that if she had sat through that, she would know bits and pieces, but wouldn't know the whole thing. Would you go over and say it in English, or would you? How would you clarify what was read with them?
See, I feel like at that point, it is similar to what ELL students are going through.
True.
It's the exact same thing that ELL kids are going through, and you don't translate, you don't interpret for them the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes us, puts us in the position of the other and makes us understand what it's like, right, to be in that position. So there is a time period where you're somewhat lost in the beginning of the school year, right? And just with ELLs, there's a silent period. So the English speakers are probably not, I'm guessing, not speaking as much as they might in an English classroom. I don't know, because I haven't taught in a dual language program, but and we're halfway through the year and it's virtual. So I don't know, Selma, if you could answer that. I mean, by now, it's just so different probably because we're virtual.
We did have there's one kid on each like side of the classroom because we divide them into group A and B, and it's like 10 kids per section. And it's one American kid on each side that is like very outspoken. And some of them were more outspoken than the Hispanics. Like there was one that he was like ready to go every single time. And I was like, okay, I see you. I see you really trying.
I wonder how he was in September.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, it'd be interesting to know.
I know when I worked at Waterman, they try really hard to start kids in dual that are English language speaking in kindergarten. And if a spot opens, say for like 3rd grade, they will usually take a Spanish speaker off their waiting list to stick there because they know a 3rd grader would like really struggle with that. But
they
at
just-
Waterman, Spanish side, only Spanish. You could only speak Spanish. Kids could only like ask questions in Spanish. English side, it was like strictly English. So, yeah.
Pretty unique. And I mean, I know that school systems come to see how Harrisonburg City is doing things in the dual side to get ideas for their own school systems. So, yeah. Thank you, Salma, for incorporating that Spanish book for us. It was fun. And you did a really nice job reading it too. Okay. Anything else for the folks, Jessica or Salma, before we move on? All right. I would like to start, rather than bringing up the PowerPoint, I'd like to start by seeing what you all came up with from the readings to demonstrate your understanding of developmentally appropriate practices. And if you need to, if it's something electronic and you want to share your screen, we can do that one at a time. Or if you just have something to hold up. So why don't we start with those who have something physical to hold up and just tell us a little bit about it. Okay, Jessica, you want to go first?
Sure. So well, first I have a poster that says staff, what to do and what not to do, match game. And so I made these puzzle pieces, and throughout the readings, when I was reading, I found pictures that matched with the what to do and what not to do. So for example, like gross motor development, what to do, and they talk about it, and then you have to match what to do with the gross motor. So you would find one of the puzzle pieces and match them together. And then you would do the same thing for what not to do and match them together. So you would have to like read them and then figure out what the picture goes with.
Nice. It would be lovely if we could do that in class. So hang on to it.
Okay.
Because we might, I don't know, down the road, we might be face to face before the end of the semester. So
But
that
I
would
was
be my
trying to
hope.
think of like a creative way where people could like put it together and realize like what the pictures and the words mean together. So
Would you put that on the card outside my office? Do you get into Memorial at all?
no, but I could make a
Make a run one day, just so I could see it more closely?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I can drop it off for you if you want. I go on Saturdays for College for
that'd be
Kids.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
Amelia.
You're welcome.
Since you're chatting, do you want to go next?
Sure. I just did a larger concept map because we did a lot of those with Donica. And so I just have like each big idea in a box. So I have, it's going to be hard to read, but I write super small, but I have creating a caring community in a box, and I put just like facts from that. Establishing reciprocal relationships with families. I have a box for that. Planning curriculum to achieve important goals, and I have like each section for that. I wrote notes for teaching to enhance development and learning, and then assessing. And so I just put all the things I thought I should remember. Yeah, you're never gonna be able to read that, but
no, but you can drop that off for me.
I was about to say I can drop it off for you too.
And I'll get them back to you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Diamond, Salma, Jamie.
Mine's is like an online thing.
I think you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, I can share if that's all right. If nobody has a physical thing to share. Okay, so
We can come back. We can go back and forth.
let me know if you guys are able to see this. Are you guys able to see that?
Mhm.
So I just did a really like quick poster of some main ideas that I thought were important, especially for early childhood. So this is developmentally appropriate practice for the primary grades. These are just things that stood out to me as a former music major and storyteller and early childhood educator. And so I chose that teacher will provide musical instruments for the children to use. Teachers encourage peer interaction. Teachers read to students every day. Teachers will set high but achievable goals, and they will provide opportunities to plan, reflect, anticipate, and revisit learning experiences.
It's like the plan, do, and review high scope type model, especially with the revisiting. Yeah. Okay.
Did you draw that, Diamond?
No, I used Canva.
Oh, I've never heard of that. That's really cool. But I was like, oh my gosh, she's got skills.
I'm not an artist at all. Trust and believe.
Canva, C-A-N-V-A.
Yeah.
Nice. Looks great. Very professional. I'm just kind of going down the line here across the top of my screen, the next person up, unless someone wants to shoot a hand up and say, I'm ready. Okay, Jamie.
I can go. So I actually did two things, mostly for my own memorization. One of them I did across the grade levels. I did a timeline of socio-emotional DAP, and then the other one I just did a chart. So I can just quick show both of them.
Yeah, great.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is my socio-emotional DAP milestones across the primary grades. And for me, that really worked because I could just see like there were some things repeated that you're still doing. And that was really helpful to watch the development of, because I mean, I think that's such a key component of teaching is being attentive to the socio-emotional development. So I really wanted to hone in on that. And then I just have like a basic chart, and this is of the higher grades, the 2, 3, and 4. No, 2 and 3, sorry. And I was really interesting when I was doing this because so much was planning the curriculum to achieve goals, as opposed to the other factors. And I didn't even include everything in it. I kind of thought about what would be important in the main classroom as opposed to like studios or specials. So I left out physical education and creative arts, even though, you know, you do some of that in the regular classroom. But I just, I really wanted to focus on just like main curriculum stuff on that category.
Got
And
it.
I didn't put everything, obviously. I pulled out what really stood out to me.
Yeah, and there's so much in there, and there is a lot of repetition. So the timeline would be really helpful to have. Nice. Good work. Who's next?
I can go.
Noelle?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm kind of in Amia's boat where my handwriting's a little small, so I made like a poster board.
Okay.
And so I have like a background in nutrition. That was my undergrad. So there's a book called like Eat This, Not That. So I did a Do This, Not That based on like the DAP. So I have things in there, and I did kindergarten. And so I have things in there like do this, foster positive relationships, and create an inclusive classroom. Not that. Exclude ELL students, students with disabilities, and not realize the power of positive relationships. So I just kind of like took the subheadings and just kind of wrote down what I thought was important in it, and it ends with assessment. So I have like 20 things on either side that I got from it.
Great.
It was neat going through it.
Yeah, nice. I think it helps to put it in our own words and pull out what's really most important to us because there's so much in there. Salma.
This is what I did.
And what did you use to make yours?
Good notes.
Good notes.
Yeah, so it's all my handwriting. There's a lot of information, and I need to like categorize it.
Yeah. It's like analyzing data, putting it into categories.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you have guidance, classroom community, environment and schedule, health and fitness, language and communication, teaching methods, and what's at the very top? Oh, positive relationships. Yeah. Good. Okay. Did we get everyone? Did I forget anyone? Okay. Thank you all for doing that. If we had been in class, we would have taken time to create it in class, maybe working with a partner or a small group. So I appreciate that you took the time to pull your thoughts together and organize the information in a way that made sense to you. And that's giving our students opportunities to do that in class is important too, and developmentally appropriate. So awesome. Okay, I do not think it will take a really long time to go through the PowerPoint. I'm not much of a lecturer, but you might pull a couple of tidbits from this. So let me share my screen. And we'll walk through this together. And I don't usually do the whole, I'll just click through so that way I can see my notes, if that's all right with you all. Let me pull that down a little bit. Can you all see that okay? Okay. I want to give you a little history because I don't know if that came up in any of the readings. There were a lot of reactions to Sputnik in the 1950s, in the late 1950s, mostly that we were behind in science. And that is when also developmentally appropriate practice first came on the scene. There was a huge increase and pressure for teachers and schools to teach math and science earlier. We've got to get ahead of the Russians. So if you remember your history, Sputnik launched by the Russians and beat us into space. The space race was on. So then there was this push down, which meant that curriculum was determined by others. Doesn't that sound familiar? Still happening today. Parents became more concerned with scores and achievement, which still happens today. Not all parents, but many. And there were a lot of inappropriate programs that resulted as a result of that. So NAEYC, which is your professional organization in early childhood, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, which serves children birth through 8, that's how they define young children, developed DAP, developmentally appropriate practices, based on consensus of early childhood professionals. It was first published in '97. There was some pushback. Some folks felt that it was too American and not culturally responsive, or didn't take into consideration differences in families and cultures. So it was rewritten and republished in 2009 to address some of those issues. So as you already mentioned, there are the 4 areas: social, emotional, physical, and cognitive. And the whole idea is that best practices will help children grow in each one of those domains. And that growth is developmental, and it depends on age, ability, interests, and family. And there are different rates of growth. Stop me if you have questions, because I tend to blow through things. Okay. And this PowerPoint did not get uploaded until today around 10. So it is on the module for this week. There's a focus on meaningful learning experiences, constructivist approach, although they don't use that term, where you're learning by experiencing real things, real objects, interactive teaching, big focus on cooperative learning and sociocultural theories, such as Vygotsky. Content is integrated instead of sectioned out for math, science, social studies, language arts. Try to integrate the subjects and the arts as well, music and art, visual arts, drama. We're working to develop the processes of learning to read and write and think and problem solve. Focusing on continuous progress with ongoing authentic assessment. And Gartrell talks really nicely about that in the chapters that you read for today with the unit planning, where he's talking about in kindergarten, it was the fish unit, and in the upper grades, it was on the birds project. So if you didn't get to Gartrell, or you're not sure what I'm talking about, make sure you go back and reread those sections. We're going to revisit that when we talk about assessment. I think he does a really nice job of laying out how to develop a unit by focusing in on the children's interests, observing them, focusing in on their cultural competencies and their environment. So the fish project was in Minnesota, where they're surrounded by thousands of lakes, and many of the families are active fishermen and women, fisher families. Anyway, that ongoing authentic assessment is also hit in that unit plan as well. So then NAEYC and the Division for Early Childhood Council for Exceptional Children, Special Education organization, got together along with the IRA, which is not the Irish Republican Army, but the Reading Association, which is now, instead of the International Reading Association, now they're the International Literacy Association, the ILA. And they came out with a joint position in '98 on learning to read and write, and a joint statement in 2009 on inclusion. And they emphasized that there is no common definition for inclusion, but that it has to have 3 things: access, So everyone should have access to learning and environments that are appropriate. Everyone should be able to participate, and everyone should have the supports necessary to help them participate in early childhood schools. So this was all focused on literacy. I guess it was really one of the first times that 3 organizations got together to develop these joint statements. So it was pretty critical and important. Talked about the best ways to teach reading and what should be included, concept of print, alphabetical awareness, phonemic awareness, letter sounds, linguistic awareness, invented spelling. In kindergarten, more vocabulary development and repeated readings and concept of word and letter naming. And this repeated readings is interesting because in Frog Street and some of the other curriculum models, there's a lot of repeated readings. And sometimes it seems like there are too many, that they're pushing too much to repeat the readings. If you've ever had young children or babysat or been around them as nannies, you know that kids love to have their favorite stories reread over and over and over again, and to the point where you want to hide that book because you're so tired of reading it, right? I don't know what happened to that book. Maybe we'll just have to pick a different one tonight, right? That being said, in some of those pre-scripted curriculums, they're doing a good job at asking you to reread them, but sometimes it's a little forced in a way. They don't seem to make it as real as they could. And the activities, I guess, that go along with it could be more engaging, in my opinion. That's just me talking. And then in the primary grades, the focus is on decoding, systematic code instruction, meaningful connected reading, literacy, independent practice, more spelling instruction, integrated reading and writing, and accurate assessment. Okay, so that's a little bit about the history. And what some of you mentioned in your pieces that you shared was some of the things that is not considered developmentally appropriate. Rote memorization. However, we do know that while certain things you just have to memorize, like your times tables, right? But you also need that conceptual understanding of what 3 times 4 really is. You know, we've got 3 groups of 4 things. So we have to have the conceptual understanding, but then as you get up in the older grades, you've got to have those memorized because the math builds on that earlier memorization. But in the early grades, what they're saying is, we don't want you to teach children concepts and make them just memorize things back, because there's no conceptual understanding when we do that. Makes sense? I mean, I think my example last week was, if you've just learned to count to 50 and you think you know what 50 things are, likely you don't. You've just memorized how to count, but you don't have an understanding of number concepts or one-to-one correspondence and that kind of thing. Same with your ABCs. You could sing the song, but you don't really know maybe the letter sounds or how to put them together to make words. We don't want to focus on drill and practice on isolated academic skills. Again, things need to be integrated because that's how our brain works. Teacher lecture, again, like I'm doing. For early childhood is not the best method, right? Nor is repetitive seat work or testing skills in isolation. Now, there may be a time, you may have a child that really likes worksheets. Okay, you know, there are some kids that just want to do worksheets. I don't know about you, but when I was little, I really liked those word find things where you had to circle the word. I just thought they were really fun. I don't know why. And I would ask the teacher. So this was probably 3rd grade, you know, top of this age span for early childhood. So again, we're saying these are things that should be discouraged, but occasionally you might have a child that might need some of these things, especially might not necessarily need it, but they might enjoy it. And you just have to know your kids. Definitely not appropriate strategies though for early childhood instruction. I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions. Well, we know what DAP does encourage, right? Play. And we rarely have time for that outside of kindergarten. Self-initiated or self-directed and selected, autonomous, individually paced, and there's independent learning going on. This doesn't mean that the teacher just steps aside. There's lots of intentionality and planning of the play that's happening, right? Somebody mentioned realistic curriculum goals. Differences in children's growth patterns and rates are important to understand by teachers. We're educating the whole child, thinking about the process of learning to read rather than just the teaching the skill, content, or the product rather than, we don't want to focus on just that. I can't say this enough. Multiple opportunities for learning with concrete, manipulative materials that are relevant to a child's experience and background. Opportunities to develop fine and gross motor skills. Learning to share. That was on someone's, I think that was, I saw that on Jamie's. They don't like to share at 5 years old. You know, they just want their own in general. Learning to see other points of view and being in control of their thoughts and feelings. All these things can happen through play.
Can I just
feel-
chime in for a sec real quick?
Yeah, what's that?
No, I just wanted to chime in about play because I think, you know, on Wednesdays I have like only 1 or 2 kids, and today we played Monopoly. And I actually like was thinking about like developmentally appropriate practices the whole time we were playing, and I just couldn't believe like the reading, the math, the social studies, like everything that we got into one game of Monopoly. I was like, I didn't think, I mean, I remember playing it as a kid and never really thought I got that much out of it, but like going in as a teacher, I was like, there is a lot to this game for learning.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you look at games differently once you become a teacher or start learning to become a teacher. So, and you can criticize them too. I remember when I first started teaching, it was the middle of the year, they added a pre-K classroom to my school, and I was hired, and someone else had outfitted the classroom and bought chutes and ladders. Next time you're around chutes and ladders, you need to look at that board game and see how complicated it is. The counting doesn't line up to the numbers, and it can be very confusing, and it goes back and forth. So it's not this linear process like learning to read would be. Anyway, I love the whole concept of games and what we can learn through them. And excellent point. Yeah, I haven't played Monopoly in years. Might need to. I don't even think I do have it. I have to get it out of the closet. I have an 80s trivia game. I am a child of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s, so I should know. But my girlfriends and I, we're all about the same age. We were older in the 80s, like in our 20s. We sucked at it. Excuse my language. We were really bad. We couldn't remember any of it. All right, moving on. So principles of development for developmentally appropriate practice. We know that it builds in sequence. There's a natural unfolding. I have in here, remember the butterfly, there's a cycle here, and it just happens naturally. And to be patient because children are developing at their own rate. Unless, as you learned in child development, you know, there's a general place where we normally see kids developing, and if they're not in that norm, then we reach out to specialists and get some suggestions and some help for children. You know, if a child is slow to learn to walk and they're not walking by 1, we start to get worried. If they're not talking by 2, we start to get worried. But we've pushed down the curriculum so much that if they're not reading by the end of kindergarten, we think we've not done our job anymore. And not every child is going to be reading at the end of kindergarten. That used to be an expectation in first grade. And now it's at the end of kindergarten. So that's a challenge for teachers. And it's this juxtaposition of what's developmentally appropriate versus what my school system is asking of me. Okay. Rates vary. We've talked about that. Slow can be better in any of these areas. And you can think about your own development as well. If you were slow in any of these areas, and you probably can think of children that are at different levels. There are optimal periods. Early experiences during those times have cumulative and delayed effects. And children are definitely active learners. Constructing their own understanding, bringing their own culture to bear on their learning, and having physical and social experiences are so important. I can't remember what I was trying to focus on this slide as I was reviewing this earlier, but we all know that young children go through invented spelling, and we should encourage that. I had when my daughter was in kindergarten, the teacher would encourage the invented spelling, and then sometimes underneath write the correct spellings, because kids wanted to see that, or should do it on the back to help if it went home, so it would help the parents be able to read it. You get really good at reading invented spelling as a teacher, but not all parents are able to read invented spelling. I think centering is the focus on one particular criteria of an item. Like you might center on the color yellow and miss some of the other things. Like if you're doing a sorting activity, maybe a child might be centering on shape or color. And those are just stages that children go through. And with experience and real objects and opportunities, they move through those stages. I don't even know why I put this slide in there. It's more about child development, but that's what developmentally appropriate practice is focusing on. Principle number 7, biological maturation interacts with physical and the social environment. Pretty self-explanatory there. Play is the vehicle for development. Play, 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 mastery and reflection. This is a scaffolding idea that Vygotsky puts forward. Development advances with practice and challenge just beyond the current level of mastery. So I've got some notes down here. I don't know why I put that character critter story in there, but I do. Just talking about steps towards children's masteries in literacy. Here's a child saying, "No fair, use your words," with a push and a shove back. Okay. Problem of the match. So and this again gets to Vygotsky, if something's too difficult, it'll be frustrating. If it's too easy, it'll be boring. Practice will advance, but drill stresses. Meeting the child where they are, taking it just a little bit further with assistance, the whole idea of scaffolding, either by another peer or by the teacher. And Gartrell talked about that too in the fish example, where a child, an older child in the class was helping the younger children at the fish table. Children, you're going to see using different modes for learning and representing, just like you all chose different ways to represent what you learned today. Time for activity planning on the teacher's side, right? You want a nice balance between quiet and active areas in your classroom and in your curriculum planning, between verbal and nonverbal, group and individual, indoor and outdoor, teacher directed and child directed. It's a lot to remember. It's a lot of stuff to think about when you're planning activities for young children. And if you mess up something, like let's just say you have a child that has some sensory issues, but you never plan any nonverbal or quiet times, you know, they're going to be overwhelmed and maybe stressed a little bit. And it does come down to understanding and knowing your students. Development does flourish in community. We learn from others, where we're valued and we feel safe, our physical needs are met, and we're psychologically secure. And these are all Maslow's hierarchies of needs. Just a little touch here on classroom design. There should be interest centers. Children should have choices. Flexible levels in the class. Everything isn't way up high where the teacher can see it. Some things are down low where children are going to be interacting with them, of course. Shelves are open and labeled. Large blocks of time. Teachers asking lots of open-ended questions. Why? Why do you think? I wonder. Toys are gender neutral. And you're enhancing the acceptance of self and others, including those with disabilities. So you have lots of variety of materials in your play centers to represent different abled bodies. Okay, that was like I just blew through developmentally appropriate practices for you, but you've read a lot about it already. And I want to ask you what you think here, a little quiz. A teacher conducts an activity for 30 minutes with 3-year-olds who mostly observe, listen, and watch. Well, have you ever seen 3-year-olds observe, listen, and watch for 30 minutes? So you know this is not developmentally appropriate. What planet is that classroom on? A teacher reads a picture book to a group of 4-year-olds. Of course. And then here's one more. A kindergarten teacher provides 1 hour or more of free choice time during which children play with blocks, dress up, and use table toys and other early childhood materials. This is another easy one. Anything you would add?
I wish the kindergarten actually looked like that.
I know, and that's the push down that we've seen in the, for the last 20 years. We've been fighting against this and fighting for more play for decades. And even when we have administrators with early childhood backgrounds, we still, in those cases, you're lucky if you're in a school where an administrator gets it. But if you're with an administrator that doesn't get that, you're not going to be able to provide these type of experiences. My advice is always ask the questions when you're interviewing. What does your early childhood curriculum look like? Are there opportunities for play? And see what happens and see how they respond. Because if you end up in a school that has scripted curriculum where there's no opportunity, you have to take out the play centers in kindergarten. And this happened in Waynesboro a number of years ago when I was a liaison for the city. That is not appropriate. It's just not. And you have to push back. And teachers in their first or second year don't feel comfortable pushing back. They've just gotten a job. I think your first 3 years are provisional, so you could be let go after your first year. So it's always nice to start somewhere where you want to be. That's my little elevator speech on how to ask the right questions when you're job interviewing. That's a great point. Okay, I'm going to minimize that. And do we need a quick stand-up stretch break? Because we're getting ready to transition. We're going to talk about Help for Billy. We're moving into the next two chapters, which were Kathleen and Jamie were going to lead. Kathleen emailed me right before class and said something came up and she couldn't be here, but she did send me her visual. So, but I'm going to let you take the lead, Jamie, and lead us through those two chapters. And then when it's time to share that visual, I'll have it ready.
Perfect. Actually, I would like to start with the visual, if that's okay, if you don't mind sharing it.
Yeah, let me get it out of my email.
Okay.
And I'm still sharing my screen, so that will work. Okay. Okay. Do you want to talk through this or do you want me to read it?
Do you mind reading it? We actually did it separately and we never got a chance to talk about it. So
Sure. She says, for this drawing, I decided to, can you all see that? Can you see what I'm reading? I decided to demonstrate the limbic system of chapter 3. I'm not the best artist, so bear with me. I decided to showcase the idea of the reptilian brain and the brain stem. This chapter had a lot of great illustrations and representations for the left and right hemispheres of the brain, how they connected to the three other parts of the brain, the neocortex, the limbic system, and the reptilian brain, pages 29 and 30. I drew what I thought the chapter was missing. I've never heard of the instinct of freezing before. I decided that the phrase fight or flight was common enough that my classmates have also likely not heard the phrase or freeze. So I wanted to showcase that. This instinct is discussed on page 33 of Help for Billy. In the example provided on pages 34 through 36, Billy's reacting using his fight instinct. The way the teacher handled the situation was inappropriate, and the whole incident could have been prevented or at least made from escalating that bad. It was a simple conversation in advance. If Billy had been told why he was not getting recess, he might not have gotten so physical. Do you all remember that in the chapter where he was throwing chairs and they called the police and they put him in handcuffs? Okay, so here is her visual. So I get it, fight, flight with the birds, or freeze. I think that's all she's got there. Yeah. Okay. So
do you want everyone to talk about this or do you want me to start going into the discussion?
Well, do you all have questions about her image? I mean, without her here, it's kind of hard to unpack exactly what she was hoping to get at. I mean, she did describe it here a little bit. And in the book, where's my book? She mentions it's on chapter or page 29. No. So
I think it's on 37 because I have something to talk about on the same page.
where they talk about freezing.
Oh, maybe not.
I don't remember reading about the freezing part. Do any of you all remember reading about freezing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess she felt that piece was missing, so she wanted to add it. But I don't know what else to add there. Do you all have any thoughts on the freeze part?
I'm pretty familiar with the freeze instinct because I grew up I was going to be a veterinarian before I decided I wanted to be a teacher. So I was really into animals, and this is something that's common that we see in a lot of animals where they will freeze instead of running or fighting back. You see it in possums, snakes, animals that like to play dead, and they just seem to no longer react to any stimuli that is in their environment. That would be the freeze response to an external stimuli or threat to them. And I'm not sure if I've seen this exactly in humans, especially children, but I think that younger students especially tend to, if they have a more aggressiveness to them, they tend to want to fight. And this kind of reminds me of, I know we looked at it last semester where this child was like thrown into a cop car because they were fighting the teacher and the cops. And, you know, by the time the cops that came and got the child, they calmed down, but now they were so scared that they were like, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail. Now they want to flee. When initially they wanted to fight. So I think that's a good example of the instincts that you can see in human nature. I don't have a good example for the freeze. I don't think I've ever seen a child necessarily freeze when they were
Yeah.
trying to do that,
Well,
but-
now listening to you talk, though, it makes me think of just shutting down. And we've all
Yeah.
it's just shut down. So maybe that's what she's thinking about when she uses the term freeze. I don't know.
I know I'm going to talk about connection, but I can connect this drawing right now if that's helpful. So I was a nanny for a little girl who had a lot of I guess emotional issues. That's when I first read this book, when I was taking care of her, and she definitely had what I guess is considered the freeze, but hers would just be, I mean, she would collapse onto the floor. First she would kick and scream, and then she would run in her room, and then she would come back out, and it's like she needed the presence of another adult there almost, but she would just collapse on the floor in hysterics. And that was her freeze instinct, I think.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Putting it in context of an example is helpful. Why don't you take us to the connections part? So basically for everyone else, Jamie, you and Kathleen each
She
chose
two
one of,
different methods.
yeah. And so you're doing connections and she did the artist
Yes.
piece. Okay.
So just a little background on connections. I think it's really a really important skill, not just for this class, but to be teaching in our classes. When I was an undergrad, I did a whole curriculum on connecting social studies and children's literature, just because kids kind of can put themselves in the place of a book character, and they're able to more readily connect history and community to their own lives if they can identify with a character. So I'm always really big into connection. I'm happy to share a connection that I had first, or I would love to hear what everyone else has to say. I want this to be kind of more group driven than me just talking, if that's okay.
Works for me.
So if anyone wants to go ahead and share a connection they found, I know there's a lot of stuff about that you could read PJ in. So I know a lot of us have that background. So I think there's some good connections. I'll give you a couple minutes if you want to just flip through and find a good connection.
Took all my notes in my other book, so I had to get my other book out. I will, I'll share a connection real quick. I wish, first of all, that I'd had this book before I was a teacher, because I would have handled some behaviors from certain children so much differently than I had. And I will say, though, that when I did sit down and talk to children and just ask this one particular boy, ask him what he needed, it was really helpful. It didn't solve the problem all the time because it was a constant, but knowing that, I mean, I don't know why I didn't try that more often, you know. So when I read this book for the first time, I was like, where was this? It wasn't written. We only used logical consequences, and Billies don't understand consequences. And that was the connection I took from the readings this week, because his brain isn't wired to do that. So no, just saying, well, you can choose to do this or this, and if you do this, this is the consequence. That doesn't work for Billy's. It works for Andy's great, but not for Billy's. So that's my connection.
Thank you for sharing. Is anyone else ready to share?
I think that just kind of drawing off what Dr. McCartney was saying, it kind of makes me reflect on how I've handled behaviors in the past, especially with children who have like repeating behaviors that are constant. It kind of makes me, I wish I had read this book prior to, working with these children, because this is like my first time seeing these kinds of behaviors. And a lot of times when I was first starting to work with children, I would interact with the child based on how everyone else interacted with the child instead of taking my own approach. So if this child was acting up and he was always in the principal's office, I would say, go to the principal's office. You clearly can't behave right. And this was not stopping anything. This, he didn't really care that he was going to the principal's office. And so one day I just stopped and asked him what he needed. Honestly, he just needed someone to talk to. And so that was like very interesting to, read that in the book, because that kind of makes me stop now, and in the future will make me stop and think, what is it that they need from me, instead of how can I punish them for what they're doing? And so I think that as teachers, we really need to reflect on the child and how we can help them rather than how we can hurt or punish them to stop the behavior. Positive works better than negative in most cases.
I definitely agree with you on that. This actually goes really well into my own personal connection. So if you don't mind me talking a little bit, I will. On page 37, there's the conversation between the teacher and Billy about the whole not going out on the playground issue. And I had a Billy when I was at Plains Area Daycare. It was hard. And at first I was giving him timeouts and they just weren't effective. He would just leave timeout. He didn't have the impulse control to stay in a timeout. So what I started doing instead was I would say, how about you and I have some quiet time together? And he and I would go sit and read a book. And after we read the book and he was like kind of removed from the situation that got him into the trouble in the first place, we were able to talk about how to react more positively. And he, even at 4, he was able to articulate then, once he calmed down, why he acted that way and how he was left out a lot by his peers. And I think that really triggered his reaction because he felt isolated. And so he could tell me, like, this person made me feel sad. And then we could talk about how we act when someone makes us feel sad. Instead of hitting them, these are some steps we can take.
Nice. I thought of another connection, but I want to hear someone else's before I share a second one. No one else has a connection?
I know we've all had a Billy at some point.
No else unmuted.
So he's, I guess I would consider him a Billy, but my son is just very sensitive and has a lot of big feelings, and he's only 4.5, so he's still dealing with those. And when he gets very frustrated, when he tries so hard, and if he can't get it, he gets very frustrated. So it's kind of piggybacking off of what Jamie was saying with the conversation, that I have learned, like, if you hold him and kind of, take him out of the situation and just kind of carry him around, but he's getting big, so I can't do that for too much longer, but kind of show him a picture, show him outside, get him in a different atmosphere and environment for a few minutes, and then calm down. And then he's fine going right back. It's just, he doesn't know how to deal and process with it. Whereas his sister, who's his twin, is complete opposite. So even though they had the same, upbringing, their personalities are very different. And it's just, it's been interesting just to try to learn how best to approach each one. But it reminded me a lot of what Jamie was saying, like you take them out of the situation, you kind of redirect them and ask them, once they calm down, ask them what is wrong, and then they can tell you what's going on. Like in his issue, he didn't take a good nap yesterday, but you wouldn't know that until he was calmed down enough.
Right. Okay, that's a great segue to my second one. When Jamie was talking about sending a child to the principal's office, that would happen a lot with my Billy. He was very large for his age as well. And sometimes I would have to physically remove him from the classroom to make sure that the rest of the children were safe. But luckily the principal's office was right across the hall. But it was not a good situation because the principal would just yell at him. So I stopped doing that. And one day I was observing, I took a professional day. This was like the second year of teaching. It might have been my first year teaching. I took a professional day and I went to observe a school over in Albemarle County where my sister-in-law was principal. And I walked into her office, and there on the floor on a cot was a child taking a nap. And that would have never happened at my principal's office. She knew what that child needed. It had been sent out of the classroom because it was being disruptive. He didn't get enough sleep that night. And so she provided what he needed. And then later they would deal with have the conversation about what was going on. But that's my other connection.
Well, that just reminds me of Maslow before Bloom.
Yep. Yeah. Jessica, you unmiked, or you?
Oh, yeah. So as I was reading this too, my very first time when I first started at the YCP, we had two Billies, but one was more extreme than the other. And when the one who was more extreme would have, how do I want to put this? Get very angry or upset, this person would start throwing things and get physically violent. But some of it was, he was trying to get attention too. So we would, which Amanda is exactly what I was talking about, because she actually had him in her kindergarten class. So she knows exactly what I'm talking about. But he was looking for positive and negative attention. So there was times where we had to get the class out of the room because it was obviously unsafe for them to be in the room. But there was times we would just have to stay silent and like not give him that type of attention that he was looking for until he had have a calm body. And we really practiced like calm body, different breathing techniques. But the breathing techniques when he was at his highest moment would never work for him. So we would just have to kind of let him be, kind of let him do what he needed to do, get all the anger out. And then when he started to calm down, then we could talk to him and say, what do you need from us? How can we help you now? But it was only at that point when he could regulate his own self. There was nothing we could do at that moment, because everything we would try to do, like breathing techniques or try to talk to him, would not work for him. So that was kind of what I thought of when I was reading this, that certain things like would not work with our type of Billy. Like we just had to let him kind of calm down until we could help him. But
Amia, you want to add anything to that?
Yes. So we found out that we have the same Billy, but Billy was my baby. He made me fall in love with teaching. Yes, he did have such a sweet side, but my first day in a kindergarten classroom, he sent me home with a bruised leg. So I was like, what did I get myself into? But I did work in the classroom with a really good teacher, and so he progressed very quickly. But just like Jessica said, he would blow up, and most of the time it was for attention, like she said, whether positive or negative. So his plan was really to ignore the negative behavior as much as we could if he wasn't throwing chairs at people or something, and really celebrate the good things. But what I can connect with him in the book is like interactive repair or simply a safe relationship is what it takes, because he had a very interesting home life. And once he figured out that me and the teacher I worked with like really cared about him, he really behaved better for us, like way better. Like I can remember like a couple months into the semester, he goes, "I'm gonna punch you in the face." And I'm like, "No, you won't." "Yes, I will." I was like, "No, you won't, because you care about me just like I care about you." And he just kind of looked at me like, "Okay." Like, you might be right. But he didn't hit me. So but yeah, so definitely like relationships are really important. And I feel like that's the first step. You can't just expect a kid to respect you and care about you if you don't show that you care about them.
That's why I try to find connections with him too. Like he's when I first started, I knew about him and I went in knowing, like, trying to figure out what he liked so I could form that bond with him.
Mm.
So he was able to calm down a little bit quicker for me because I had that connection with him.
Yeah, you definitely had to have a relationship with him, or
or that would not work.
you could care less.
Can I ask a question? I hope it's appropriate. I see it sounds like a lot of the Billies are males, and I was just wondering, is there something like, I don't know, biologically in younger boys, where is it like a maturity thing, or is it just, you know, like the dysregulation? Like, is there some science behind that?
I don't know if there's science behind it, but there are more males that are labeled with developmental delays and special needs. But I also had a number of Billies that were girls. But traditionally, it seems to be a more prevalent in young boys. And some of that in the literature, it comes out that we have different expectations for boys. They're supposed to be strong. They're supposed to be silent. They're not supposed to be whiny, you know, so there's a lot of that stuff too to unpack. But I don't know if there's anything genetic, you know, connected to boys rather than, you know, that's part of the Y chromosome. I just don't know. Does anybody else have any background in that?
I don't have a background, but I kind of have like a theory.
Mhm.
I think of like mass shootings, and how those are statistically performed by men. And I really do think it has to do with like toxic masculinity and the fact that they're supposed to repress all of these things and they come out in very negative ways. Whereas if we just let boys express their feelings, I think we would have a lot less of these problems.
Right, right. Good point. Yeah. Salma or Diamond, do you want to add anything?
Going off of what you said, Dr. McCartney, about the Billy taking a nap, we had a situation last semester in my practicum where a little girl was just having a bad day. So I tried like talking to her and like walking outside to have her get herself away from the situation that was provoking her. And instead of making things better, I was like, okay, I need you to calm down in order for me to understand, because I don't understand crying. So I need you to calm down, whatever you need to calm down. It's okay. We're just going to stay out here until you can tell me what's wrong. That didn't work. That didn't work. I was like, okay, I don't understand what's going on and I can't help her. So then my CT was like, yeah, she just needs a nap. And they took her to the principal's office. She took a nap. She came back and she was like, nothing had happened. I was just like, okay.
Yeah. And so they just knew that because they'd been around her enough, or they might have known her home life. There are days when I just need a nap.
I'm hearing some of my kids, I mean, they're 4th and 5th graders, but they're still very young, talking about how they stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know how they're supposed to get any work done.
Right. And the other thing that used to scare me is what they would tell me they would watch on TV. You know, just, scary stuff. Wow. So the book has started to get into the trauma-informed care piece and trauma itself. And Pat Kennedy is going to be with us on March 10th. So she will dive into that in a very deep way. She'll be with us for about an hour. She does great work with trauma-informed care and teaching it to teachers. So I don't want you to think I'm just glancing over that part and not spending enough time on it, because we'll have some more time with that. Jamie, do you have anything else you want to bring up?
I don't think so. I think this was a really great conversation. I think talking about Billy's is like really so important, like just to share experiences, because you know the nap thing is like a trick that I didn't even think of, because
Right.
my last Billy refused to nap, so that was never something we could do to correct it. But I think I think a community of educators who can talk about how to handle Billy's makes the world better for Billy's.
Yeah, absolutely. Wrapping up, we don't have class next week, again, because it's a weird holiday because we don't have spring break. I'm going to share my screen again so we can just take a look at the modules that are coming up. Let me ask you all for what you need for learning. I've had students tell me before they like it when I do a little video narration of the modules each week. And it's like 3 minutes. If that's something that you think would help you, if you're more of an auditory processor rather than reading everything that you're supposed to do, I'm happy to do that. And I can walk through it with a screencast video if you want. It's not a problem for me to do that at all. I saw Jessica shake her head. So if one person wants it, I'm guessing more people might. So no class on the 17th. And then the next week will be more focus on, my internet's not responding. It's thinking about it. On help for Billy. So we'll be into chapter 5 and 6. And James and Amia are going to lead our morning meeting. And then Jamie and Kathleen are going to present on Waldorf. Chapter 5 is on belief systems. The quote by Henry Ford on that first page is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So it's all about our belief systems. And then this chapter 6 is asking the right questions. So that's going to be a good one. So that's Billy. And then Gartrell, we're bouncing around in Gartrell. We're going to go back to chapters 1 and 2, which I jumped to the chapters this week because they are more connected to developmentally appropriate practice. But 1 and 2 will give us a background on what he's talking about as far as democratic life skills. Okay. Questions?
Do you think that you could possibly take the assignment due dates and add them like so that they can show up on the calendar? Because I know sometimes it's easy to miss.
Yes, I'm getting ready to do that. I just didn't do it today, but I got everybody into each module, and now I'm going to go in and put the dates that you're doing everything. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I know sometimes things just fly over my head.
No, I get it. It's on my list of things to do tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dr.
All right.
Do we need
Yeah.
to sign up for help with Billy, or is that just find out?
So we don't have anybody leading for the 24th. Does anybody want to take on chapter 5 and 6 to lead the discussion? Noelle, is anybody? Noelle and Jessica? Okay, I'll write that down. And that's on the 24th, so that's in 2 weeks. Chapters 5 and 6 for Billy. And again, you can choose any of the strategies in that discussion circle packet that I shared with you last week. So we're just trying to encourage discussion. So if there's anything we need to do ahead of time, like if you want us to find a passage or a favorite quote or something, let us know ahead of time so we can be ready for that. I should have said that earlier. Okay, anything else?
So our summer class is usually online?
I had heard, well, Jamie said that she read that they were all going to be online this summer.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's
And I
all.
think it sounds like I'm getting approval to teach the families class in the second 2-week time frame. So that's in June, like the beginning of June.
Okay.
There'll be some overlap with the creativity course if you're taking that this summer. And
Okay.
I really don't want to teach creativity online. So I'm going to see if there's a way I can teach it face to face. But if you all need it online, maybe we'll do this hybrid thing where some people are online, some people are face to face. Whatever you all need, I'm willing
I don't
to do.
necessarily need it online. We're just trying to figure out when we can go down to, I don't want to say, I'm not going down to Florida to party or anything. We're planning a move there. So we're trying to figure out a time we can go down and like scope out neighborhoods, and I'm not going to miss class for it. So
Yeah. I think I can put some specific dates in the announcement section of Canvas. So you
Okay.
have that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All righty, we'll wrap things up. Happy birthday to